Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanalamvartanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. I salute Lord Krishna, world teacher, son of Vasudeva, destroyer of Kamsa, Chanala, supreme bliss of Devaki. Om Sahavavatu Sanau Bhunaktu Sahaviram Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May that one give us vigor in our work and also vigor and efficiency in our studies. May we not unnecessarily cavil or argue with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Well, welcome to this 15th chapter, commencement of the 15th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It's a very, very significant and important chapter. In a sense, it is actually a kind of crossroads. We've reached the other shore, as it were, of the Gita today in this 15th chapter. 16th chapter, 17th chapter are all supplements to the main body of the work. And the 18th chapter is a conclusion summary. The 15th chapter really is short as it is. Only 20 verses are there. We find here the whole essence of the Vedanta contained in this chapter with many, many significant and important concepts. The Lord, in the last chapter, the 18th chapter, says that iti guhyatman shastram idam muktam maya anagha. O flawless one, have I taught you this science, the greatest of secrets. This is not because the 18th chapter is the end and conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, but it is because it is a science and a philosophy, a practical thing that can be implemented. The function of the Vedas is to awaken the awareness of Paramartha, that is, the supreme or highest truth, highest principle of truth. And so this chapter does the job. In the 13th chapter, we found the importance of separating the field and the northern field, that is, the Purusha and the Prakriti, the inner self, divine self, on the one hand, and the expression or manifestation of it on the other. 14th chapter told us that the composition of this nature is threefold. And it teaches us how then to discover this inner essence by saturating the mind with the sattva quality. We have some examples of this in the story of Rama. The Rama, there we find that Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishana represent these three gunas. Kumbhakarna representing this inertness, this tamas. And we find Ravana as representing this rajas. And ultimately Vibhishana is the rescuing sattva. So we find this in many different kind of contexts and stories. This 15th chapter starts off with a wonderful analogy. It tells us that this whole of existence that we take as an objective world is something like a tree, not just any tree. There are trees in different cultures that are sacred. For example, in Ireland and the Celtic cultures, the oak tree is a sacred tree. But this is a particular kind of tree. This is an ashwatha tree, a people tree, that is a tree who gets its nourishment from above, below, because a downward causation is seen. that is the source, nourishes all the branches below. And this story, of course, is taken from a Kathopanishad. The Kathopanishad is very much more specific about it. What is the meaning of it? And so we have to resort to this. But these brief 20 verses contained in this most important chapter tells us about this tree of life, using this analogy with its branches. In many different fields, particularly in the field of science, for example, we find the idea of evolution represented as a kind of tree of life. And there we see how the origin of life is something like a root. But of course, there are two types of root, and the real essence is the taproot. Brahman is the taproot. And then, this being the samsara causing us difficulties and pain, we find particular reference to this in Buddhism, that this tree of life that is represented as something that is a kind of something that we need to, in a sense, escape from, is the Buddhist understanding. But if this tree and the root are the same thing, should we try to escape from it? Is a good question. Or should we see how we can work within it, see how we can master it, see how we can overcome it, and see how we can discriminate in using it. And in a sense, we have to cut it down. The whole term of ashvata infers to us that there is something that is not quite stable in it. It suggests something whose existence tomorrow is uncertain. The Kathopanishad refers to this tree in this way: Urdhva Mulo Vakshaka. Vakshaka, actually, Vraksha, means a tree, but the root means the thing which can be cut down. Esha Svataha Sanatana Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma Tadevam Hritam Uchate Tasmim Lokaha Shritta Sarve Tadnyatyete Kashana Etat Vaitat, says the Kathopanishad. References the second section or chapter of the Kathopanishad, the third canto, as it were, and the first verse. Shankaracharya gives a very interesting commentary on this. He says the root are up and the branches down below. We have to have that image. And this ancient, because we find it is there for millennia, millennia, and millennia. If we look into the cosmology, we'll see how ancient this tree is. And that its source is pure. That is Brahman, and that alone is immortal. But the tree itself is something that is changing. Its source is pure, the tree itself impure. There's a contrast. So a vast commentary is there with regards to it. And then how to cut it down, therefore, we cut it down with the axe or the instrument of discrimination. Actually, detachment. The opposite side of it is attachment and love of God. The competent ones are able to do this. And competent ones means we have to take this individual self-idealization of I, this attachment to this body, what the 13th chapter declares as the field, and make a distinction, a discrimination there, and then completely, ruthlessly, ultimately cut it asunder with the acts of detachment. As I say, the positive aspect of it is attachment and love of God. Now, this may be a high ideal that may be intimidating. How can we just detach from everything? But the Bhagavad Gita encourages us, as all good teachings do, to approach this subject in a practical, progressive, step-by-step way. And that is why 18 chapters are dedicated to this whole process. So we begin then understanding the overview of this chapter with 20 significant, poignant verses. Having known the competent one who has this sense of detachment, who has overthrown this self-idealization, this particular ego, self-image, he attains something that is a supreme abode akin to this root, taproot. And then what is this Jivatman that has to be defined in this chapter? And then an cultivation and an access point, which is called the divine eye, the insight, divine insight is cultivated, where we look within. Again, reverting to the Kathopanishad, we find that this inversion of the senses reveals that which is within. And lest we misunderstand, this great supreme entity, this Paramatman, is actually immanent in all these things, immanent within this samsara. And when we have this detachment, the samsara does not coexist with it. It disappears. Of course, being a mythical tree, an apparent tree, once we awaken again to the drama that unfolds as this tree, we enter back into it and play out the drama. And then we find also continuation of such chapters as chapter 10, where so many manifested glories are delineated for our meditation to tune into this glory of the self. And some other aspects are given very usefully in this 15th chapter. 20 verses, that's all there is, but extremely valuable and describing, in a way, the essence of the whole of Vedanta. We begin by chanting the first verse. It begins with a statement by the Lord. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Mudam Adakshakyam Ashvatam Praho Avyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Virasa Vedavit. The Blessed Lord said, Urdhva Mulam, rooted above, and Adaha Shakam, branches below, Ashvatam, the Ashvata, that is the Ashvata tree, that which is uncertain from day to day, not the same today as it is tomorrow or as it was in the past. Brahuha, they speak of Yayam, something which is indestructible because it has always been there as long as we can think. And the Chadamsi, that is the meters of the hymns, that is the Vedas. These are the leaves of the tree. We'll explain why this is so. So the one who knows this is a true Vedavit. Vedavit, knower of the Vedas, is not a person who has studied the Vedas and knows them off by heart and can chant them. This is not the meaning of Vedavit. Vedavit is the one who truly understands the nature of nature itself. And why should the leaves be described as the Vedas? Because how can we distinguish between one tree and another? By the leaf. Those people who are experts in botanical knowledge and study will see there's an ash tree, there's an oak tree, there's a peepal tree, there's this tree, there's that tree, simply by seeing the shape of the tree, but mainly the shape of the leaf. And as we know, the peepal leaf will have a very distinctive leaf that culminates in a point. And will have this distinguishing factor that it looks as if the nourishment comes from above down below. Seeing that this root, which is above, that is transcendent, is nourishing all the other branches, culminating in the common knowledge of the leaves, how we distinguish one thing in nature from another. All knowledge is contained in the Vedas. The ancient understanding of all knowledge, be it knowledge of mathematics, science, cosmology, linguistic, astronomy. All of these various branches of science are all called Vedas, from vid, to know, to see, to understand, to comprehend. The true Vedavid, the true knower of the Vedas, will be the one who starts off studying the science of what exists there. But of course, the leaf has this peculiar characteristic. If you study it, you'll see the whole of the tree gets its whole energy from the sun. With the magic of chlorophyll, it is able to create a photosynthesis effect and capture all photons that are distributed by the sun's rays, and from there manufacture something living. In this same way, the Vedas is the source. This whole knowledge gives us an expose of this wonderful samsara, this wonderful tree. One who knows it is the Vedut. And then we'll see in a leaf a mini structure, a miniaturized structure of root and branch. Is just a duplication of the whole structure of the tree in miniature form. In this same way, what we find at a very small microcosmic level, we'll find in the whole macrocosm, all duplicated. This simplifies the various laws of physics and the various understandings that people have in struggling to find out what is what in this whole universe. So when we say this Ashwatha tree representing samsara, by samsara we mean the entire range of existence, from Hiranyagarbha or cosmic mind down to the tiniest, we can even say in modern times, atomic structures. So the Blessed Lord said, they speak and have spoken, and we see this in the Kathopanishad, of this imperishable Ashwatha tree. With its root above and branches below, its leaves are the Vedas, and he who knows it is the knower of the Vedas. And as I said before, this term Ashwatha means that which is not today as it was yesterday. And in the Kathopanishad, we find reference to this vraksha, that thing that is possible to cut down. How do we cut it down? We'll find the various other stanzas will elucidate this. So the tree is both a symbol and it's an entity revealing life, and it's helping the study of life itself. That's the meaning of the fact that the leaves are there, that the Chandamsi or the hymns of the Vedas are these leaves. And through these hymns or leaves, the expression of life all over nature is suggested to the seeker of knowledge. Now, as usual, in our study of the Bhagavad Gita, we try to make reference, and this particular book has a useful commentary that tries to incorporate statements from Sri Ramakrishna. So, Sri Ramakrishna uses another wonderful example, a beautiful parable about a marketplace. He says, a man standing outside a marketplace hears a general buzz. Nothing is distinct, but his perception changes as soon as he enters into the market. The transactions are all clearly heard and understood. And in the same way, similarly, when a man is away from Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, his inquiry is all in confusion. We stand here with the question, I am here, where is God? And everything becomes confused from there on. It need not be so. We have to get close to that Ishvara, and then all this cacophony of confusion goes away. And so he goes on. There is no end to his search into cause and effect if he is far away, to his cogitating over the why and how of things, and to his debates, which are all on the head level, all the intellectual level, to his arguments and counter-arguments, and to his theorizing. But on the realization of Ishvara, all these speculations and conjectures come to an end. The mystery of nature becomes an open book to him. In this image of this tree, we should try to find out what is the taproot. Go to that source. Having gone to the source, we know everything. Supposing it's conventional tree, that is, the roots are below and branches above. We will have no inclination if we didn't know any better. We would think it was a stick in the ground. When we investigate, we see the whole network of roots not only allows a nourishment for the tree and is the source of the tree, but it is also hidden. It is not obvious. It is invisible to the naked eye. We may as well think that it's a stick in the ground if we didn't have any further knowledge. Not only does it create a source for the tree, it also creates a stabilizing base for it. So both are true. This Brahman, the supreme source, is not only a base for the whole of the tree of life, but it is also the source of nourishment, the thing that nourishes it. That this Prakriti is constituted of three gunas was made clear in various chapters preceding, but particularly the use of them in the 14th chapter. And again, anything that is significant and important is repeated over and over and over again, that this whole thing is comprised of only three things. There's a very useful image that we can think of that occurs in a big celebration every year, and that is the story of the demon Mahishasura being combated by Durga, the great feminine fortress where all the energies of the entire existence come together. And the buffalo, of course, Mahishasura, the great demon, represents so conclusively this element of tamas, this element of darkness and ignorance. And then this energy, even the color worn by this entity which we call Durga, representing the rajas necessary to overcome it. And then above Durga we find there is the Lord Shiva sitting there calm, representing the sattvic element. We find this tamas going to rajas, going to sattva, is a whole description of the evolutionary process. From mere inert, insentient matter, rocks and mud, comes organic life, rajas. And this culminates ultimately in the capacity for moral living that we call sattva. And then we are able to transcend these three elements. This is repeated over and over again as a process. So ultimately the gunas are transcended. The absolute itself is attained. And all turmoils down below in the physical life, in the very lowest branches. And then near to the root, we see the heavenly branches. We'll see in the structure, Hiranyagarbha, this great cosmic mind from where all these other branches come. Beautiful description. Is a wonderful meditative theme, to take this tree and see how it describes so fully the origins of life and this evolutionary process going from this one entity, this existent entity that neither comes nor goes. And so how is this earthly life to be enriched? We find this elucidation again of the gunas. The rhythm of the stanzas changes because of their importance. Adascho tridvam prastastasya shakha guna pravritha vishaya pravalaha alascha mulanyanusam tattani armana vandani manushaluke. Adaha, below, cha, and urdhvam, above, and spread, prashuddha. Tasya, in its branches, shakaha, we find guna pravrataha, nourished, By what? By the gunas. Below and above its branches, nourished by the gunas. Those who haven't attended previously will have to understand guna literally is a binding rope, something that binds you fast and limits you in a causal relationship. But it is not exactly a quality. It contains a quality, no doubt. Qualities are associated with it, but it is a substantial thing. It is one of the three ingredients of nature itself. Sense objects are its buds, continuing the analogy of this tree. And below in the world of men stretch forth the roots, engendering action. The analogy between this people tree and the samsara comprising of the phenomenal existence, we keep it up in this stanza. Buds and twigs are put forth only by those branches which are full of sap. The functioning of these three gunas will supply the required sap, the thing that keeps these things sustained and going, and keeps us feasting on the senses and the objects of the senses. As long as we do that, we continue this growth and sustentation of this Ashwatha tree. As mentioned before, what is necessary is that there is a taproot. God is the taproot of this tree in this analogy. And the subsidiary roots are, of course, of two types. But the taproot, together with the trunk, is the seat of life for the tree. And since Ishvara is the very source of this Jagat, see, Jagat is a very technical term. Jagat, the thing that continuously changes. What a wonderful idea these ancient people had of a summary of what is existence. You may think it's obvious that when you look out in the universe, you'll find things constantly changing. And it changes because we observe these changes because we have this perception, this sense of fitting things into a sequential time. And that time will have in its sequence cause and effect, a causal relationship, which is sequential. This is followed by that, and so it goes on. When we look at the totality, we find it's different. Who can ever understand the totality of this tree? In this imagery, we can stand back and see the whole totality. The leaves are the Vedas. The trunk we find there as and a combination of the gunas and all the structures of the tree of life, all these various branches and the roots, and how the taproot represents this highest principle. All this we can imagine because we are standing outside the tree and looking at the totality. Our difficulty is we are right in the midst of this tree. And as long as we are in the midst of this tree, not being able to see the totality from Brahma to a clump of grass is the expression, then we will not be able to use all of discrimination. The positive side, as I say, of it is love and attachment to God, love of the Lord. So our first step then would be by using this analogy and others. And this is such a profound analogy. Just to see the similarities and see how this tree can be cut down because it's a vriksha, something that is able to be cut down. Karma, action, aids a person in reconstituting nature. It is karma that keeps it going. And it is karma, meaning action, again, that binds us to the various tendencies and provides the momentum to prolong the wheel of birth. Samsara indicates this wheel, this continuum of birth, life, death, a kind of syndrome like that, not being able to get out of it. In other words, karma and prakriti are actually inseparable. Now then, how to cut this down? We mentioned it before, but the stanza itself goes like this. Again, using a different meter. Na rupam asya hat to palabhyati, nantro na cha dir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatam enam suvirutam mulam asanga shrena dridhena jita. Its form is not here. Its rupam, its form is not here perceived as such. Neither its end, nor its origin, nor its existence. Why? Because we cannot see the whole totality in one go. And so we can't see the end of it. We can't see the beginning of it. We can't make sense of it. We're stuck right inside it. Having cut, therefore, asunder, this firm-rooted ashvata, this mulam, this suviruta mulam, firm-rooted tree, with asanga shastrena, the axe of non-attachment, which has to be dridena, strong, and having cut it asunder, chitta, with a strong axe of non-attachment. Not half-hearted. We're currently doing some construction work. If you bang something just mildly, you have no effect. With the full force you have to use in order to get the effect. We have to be committed to this, with this understanding of this ephemeral samsara, and committed to it with intense love of God. This is intense love of God that will cut this tree, the positive aspect of it. So, in summary, emphasizing the point, this Ashwata tree of mundane existence doesn't have any stability for us. One of the key things that people are looking for is security, stability, and security and happiness. We won't find it here. That has to be our conviction. Can the ordinary man posit anything about this tree? It is partially determinate, beyond a limit. It is unknown and unknowable. We don't know the full extent of it. Science is trying to understand what is the full extent of this universe. Both ends, both in terms of its origin and in terms of its minute field at the rock bottom at its base, and in terms of its cosmological development and evolution. So once more, we can resort to Sri Ramakrishna for some commentary on this. The silkworm is a good example he uses. The silkworm gets encaged in the cocoon, spun by itself. Similarly, the worldly person gets entangled in the meshes of his own desires. It is constructed by ourselves, weaving a cocoon around ourselves, and then complaining how can we escape, how can we get out of it. But when the silkworm develops into a butterfly, a metamorphosis taking place, it breaks open its nest and comes out to enjoy the light and air outside. This is why butterflies, of course, have been symbols of freedom, because such a dramatic change takes place. A cocoon woven around itself and then developing within, secret as it were, its full potential, its beauty as a butterfly, and flying off in a spirit of freedom. Similarly, when the man in bondage cuts asunder his attachment to Maya, he is able to behold Brahman. These terms are interchangeable. Samsara, Maya, Prakriti, and that which is deemed to be imperishable from the point of view of unmanifest. Then that goal should be sought for as the first starting point, because knowing that we cannot find any lasting satisfaction or help in this world, we then are convinced that we have to ruthlessly take our axe and cut it down. Going whither they do not return again, I seek refuge in that primeval Purusha. There's also a kind of prayer that we can repeat, whence stream forth eternal activity. Tadha padam tat parimargitam Yasmin Gatana Nirvatan E Bhuyaha Tameva Cha Tyam Purusham Prapadye Yata Yataha Pavriti Pashtata Purani. This ancient one, this I seek refuge in that primeval Purusha. We have to understand what this term Purusha means. This term Purusha is used. Purusha is derived from Sanskrit. Two Sanskrit roots are there. One is Purna, meaning fullness. The implication is there. Something that is already free. It suggests that it fills the universe invisibly in the form of Sat Chit Ananda. That's the one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is a city, Puri. A city already abiding in your heart. Invisibly again, in contrast to a visible king. Visible king is confined to the city. But this invisible entity within the heart is not confined anywhere and pervades everywhere. So the very significant term is term Purusha. Once more, Sri Ramakrishna tells us this. The weaning of the Jivatman from the Prakriti and his being wedded to the Paramatman are expatiated, of course, as we go on. But Sri Ramakrishna tells us, on detection, the thief takes to his heels. When you find a thief entering your house, I always remember, and it may still be currently the case, that in Zimbabwe, they put small boys through the window, small children, because they'll fit through a small space, and the window. Small children, because they'll fit through a small space, and then they hand all the goods out to the adults, is the way they do it. But unlike other places, if you wake up and detect them, the boys being boys will run away straight away. So on detection, the thief takes to his heels in the same way. Similarly, when you see into the nature of this Maya, it disappears from you. When you discover it, when you discover the magic trick, then the magic of it goes away. The spell of it goes away. The enamored aspect of it goes away. So when Maya is found out, it disappears by itself. That means, you see, and I've told you before, when we look at science, and science, that is not the applied science, but when we look at investigative science, theoretical physics, for example, they are trying to examine and understand Maya. Science is the science of Maya. And so they will not find the true nature of it. It will be always inscrutable, even though some details and some mechanistic aspect will come out. Still, we are only dealing with an apparent universe, not an actual one. This is the great difference between these ancient scientists of the Vedas and modern scientists today. And each one is approaching, that is the inner approach, the inner investigation and discovery, and the outer investigation and discovery are approaching the same area of understanding, ultimately. Having found no end to the investigation, we're looking now for something much more subtle. And you can find it by going deep within. Deep within, not necessarily in the meditative state, but deep within in a scientific way as well. Understanding what is behind and within everything. Going on an investigation like that will culminate in this understanding where this Maya, this uncertainty, will by itself disappear. Just as this world, this waking world, the world of the waking ego disappears in a dream and disappears even fragmentation experienced in a dream, even that goes away in a dreamless sleep. In a dreamless sleep, there's no distinction anywhere. There's no causation, there's no time, no space. All of these distinctions go away, and we are able to register after the fact. Because of this, it was very peaceful. No second to disturb me, no second to argue with me, no second to dislike me or despise me, no second to even praise me. No contrast between praise and blame. These sets of opposites, hot and cold, pain and pleasure, nothing like that. And no time, no events. That is why there's a peace. The only thing is, it doesn't last. It goes back from the ignorance area, the tamasic area, the area of indistinction anywhere. And this drama is replayed in the whole of the samsara that eventually gets devolved into a state of equilibrium and then comes out again in its structured way. Structured way means the gunas find some agitation, and then pure sattva comes out as cosmic mind. And then that vibrates more and more and more in different permutations, combinations. And from these subtle fields that we call subtle elements, we come to a barrier, as it were, where we see distinctive things that we interpret as this or that. And getting attached to it, this attachment gives us difficulties. If we don't really truly understand this by now, through going through the whole of the Gita to this point, then there's no motive, there's no reason why we should apply discernment or detachment, these two tools, practice. So, weaning the Jivatman is important. Of course, to try and do it in one jump is wonderful. But for most of us, it requires a weaning process. Just like anybody who is suffering from some kind of intoxication, some kind of addiction somewhere. An addiction, you can go cold turkey, stop it in one go, or you can progressively wean the person off. Now, nirvana moha jita sangat dosha ajatmanitya vinivritta kamaha tandve miktaha sukha dukkha kasam nya kachantya amudaha padam avyayam tat. Nirmana moha, free from what? Pride. Pride is one of the gateways to our personal hell. This ego, we see it delineated in a wonderful structure when we study the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Very simple. Cause of all our suffering is this ignorance, avidya, here described as Maya in the commentaries. This great samsara. But it is not different. This is the difference between Vedanta and the yogic system. It is not different. It is not a separate dualistic thing. And when we discover this Purusha, the other disappears by itself. That is the distinction. This, of course, is used in a different sense. The Sankhya's and the Yogis will call it a kind of isolated position, kaivalya, separation like that. But regardless of these differences and distinctions, the cause is this ignorance. And this ignorance allows us to develop an individual version of it that we call aham, I. And that creates a certain pride. This is mine, certain sense of ownership, an act-of-profit complex. And as long as we are hooked into this individuality, another way of saying it is this attachment to this physical body and a physical identity, a psychophysical complex, that is the physical body with an additional behavioral aspect to it, which we call personality. That is why we introduce this whole subject of this Vedanta through these personal development workshops. Because these sets of egos that produce this element of pride, I am this. When you ask somebody about their life, there's a kind of boastfulness that comes out, either subtly or blatantly, that talks about your job or your family or your interests, portraying to the other person the image that you want to convey. So this pride has to be conquered. This delusion has to be conquered. Free from pride and delusion, with the evil of attachment conquered. Attachment to what? Attachment primarily to the body-mind complex and the environment associated with it, particularly that aspect of it that is claimed for you personally. Ever dwelling in the self, ever poised in that central entity of the self, in this analogy of the tree identified as the real root. Their desires being completely stilled because there's a completeness there, there's a perfection there. Don't forget Purusha. Purusha derived from this Purna, this fullness. Liberated, freed from all these pairs of opposites. We get pulled toward one, away from another. We get tossed around in this way. And we put every effort to avoid the pain and to move toward the things that we like. So liberated from these pairs of opposites, known as pleasure and pain, sukha dukkha, the undiluted, those who have a clear understanding, they reach that eternal goal. Is it possible for us to do it? On Sunday, we had a discussion Sunday morning when we went through the Vedanta series as a study group. And one questioner started off by saying, ordinary people, can we ordinary people get to this height? And of course, my reply is, there are no ordinary people. Everyone is extraordinary. Everybody has individual skills and talents to use. It is by using this that we work toward this culmination of this evolutionary process, described as this tree. So there is an eternal goal, and as with all goals, we have to keep it always in mind. And if that goal is God, we describe it in this way. We always have to keep the mind tuned into that and the glory of this self that we call God. Take our heart and attach it to the heart that we call God, and never let it be separated. So ridding the mind of all impurities and fixing this on Atman, these are the twofold intents on which the spiritual practitioner, we are all spiritual practitioners, the sadhaka engages himself, and the mind becomes all powerful as it gains in purity. A pure mind is a powerful mind because of its clarity. This powerful mind, this powerful instrument that we have, the capacity to implement any thought and make it condense anywhere for anybody. So this purity gains access to the Atman. All of our spiritual endeavor is to purify and clarify the mind. The greatest and the holiest of its achievements lies in its getting fixed in the Atman. How many times? Fix your mind on me, Shri Krishna says. Man becomes God through this benign act of the mind. But always remember, if you make this statement, don't stand in the psychophysical unit. Don't stand in the field, what was known as kshetra, the field. Stand in the position of kshetrajna, the knower of this field. Sri Ramakrishna again makes the statement, the bound soul is man. The freed soul is Ishvara. When you become attached to Ishvara, you'll find, this nearness, this closeness becomes oneness, pure being, and a transcendent position happens. This is a famous statement. We attribute it to Swami Vivekananda, but I think he also was quoting it from another philosopher. What is the distinction? How can we define this Ishvara or God? Ishvara, he says, is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere. What is the Jivatman? It is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is in one localized particular place. Very beautiful description. You can imagine now a circle, and then you take away the boundaries. The circumference is nowhere, it's infinite. But the center of Ishvara is everywhere. So let us see what does the Supreme Abode look like. Natat, now we change the meter. Natat Bhashayate Suryo Nasha Shankana Pavahaka Yadgatana Nivartante Tadama Paramam Mama. That the sun illumines not, nor the moon, nor fire. That is my supreme abode. Going whither, they return not. On entering the sea, a river loses its individual identity as a river and gets merged in the ocean. And in this way, the same way, Jivatman merges its individuality into this Paramatman. The sun illumines not. We have sunshine here today, the last few days, wonderful sunshine. And we can feel the rays of the sun on the skin. And we can observe the sun rising and setting. We know the nature of the sun, and when we study the sun, we can see how beautiful it is, how wonderfully arranged. An average kind of sun, an average kind of star in relation to stars. A kind of dwarf star. Sufficiently arranged so that we get the benefit of the sun rays. And we don't get unduly hot. That is, the Earth doesn't have the rays focused in one area. It's designed to spin on its axis, an arrangement like that, and held in a mutual positioning around the sun. We can observe the sun, but what is that which allows the sun to shine, that shines from within, the one that lights the sun? That doesn't get illuminated by anything. It is self-luminous, self-effulgent. And so the sun cannot shine on it. It shines, it lights the sun. The moon doesn't shine on it. It shines by reflection in the moon. And the fire, you see the connection. It is within fire. If we can get used to seeing the Supreme within all things that shine, just as a starting point, and extend this example to all other names and forms, we will start this purification process. So that's my supreme abode. That is where I reside, and I don't move out of it by just residing there. All these other things, the sun shines, the reflection of the moon is there, lightning is there, fire is there. And when you really understand that, you don't return to this Ashwata tree again. You don't return to this samsara again. This is intimidating for many people, this prajnanam, because they say, well, then I lose my whole identity. Can you see the trap? Sri Ramakrishna says this. When pure camphor is lit, it leaves no residue. Just everything disappears. And when meditation is absorbed in samadhi, meditation meaning when we have a mindset that fragments things, that decides things, that sorts things, that analyzes things, when that all merges and gets absorbed into a state, subconscious state that we call samadhi. Two types of samadhi being there. one where we retain an element of self-consciousness. Such entities will use that, making the ego an open channel for divine grace everywhere and be of use to society. These will be the teachers. But this other kind of samadhi, this nirvikalpa samadhi, where this nearness becomes a oneness. And this oneness, even the description is inadequate because it's not numerical. It's not subject to numbers, 1, 2, 3, etc. It's just one without a second. We can't really make any description of it. So the distinctions such as I, you, says Sri Ramakrishna, and the objective world vanish. Brahman, the Shuddha Chaitanya, pure consciousness alone remains. Now a question can arise, of course. Does the Jivatman first remain alien to the Paramatman and then get subsequently unified with him? What do you think? So we have to define the Jivatman. Mamai Vamso Jivaloke Jiva Buddha Sanatanaha Maha Shashtani Triyani Prakritishtani Karshati. An eternal portion of myself, having become the jiva in the world of jivas, attracts the senses with the mind as the sixth abiding in prakriti. When we call something ignorant, when we say we are suffering from this avidya, ignorance, it is because we have forgotten this one aspect, that an eternal portion of myself, says Sri Krishna, having become the jiva, myself become the jiva in the world of jivas, attracts the senses toward me. And with the mind as a sixth, 5 plus 6, sixth one, abiding in prakriti. This is a most profound teaching. We could meditate for hours at a time on this one stanza. And so for that reason, I will finish off this evening with this brief introduction, these inroads into this most profound chapter, 15th chapter. And we'll repeat this stanza when we come back, because it requires a lot of elucidation. So profound is it. So we'll finish off this session. Thank you for joining me in this Bhagavad Gita, the 15th chapter, with only 20 stanzas, but some significant and unique ideas, starting off with this concept, this analogy of this Ashwatha tree, and seeing the significance of it. Now, what I tell people or remind people is, when we study these texts, it's not a question of reading it. Some people I ask, so have you come across the Srimad Bhagavad Gita? Yes, I read it. I said, it's not a novel. It's not there to be read. It's there to be studied. And a certain system of study is there. Classically, we have to hear it. This is what we're doing now. This Shravana. And then it's manana. We have to reflect on it. We have to contemplate its principles. And then we have to nitityasana. We have to meditate on it, on its principles. This is the reverse of how this came out. All scriptures came from meditation. And then a reasoning out of the principles, trying to see how we can formulate it so people can understand and hear about it. And there we come to whatever is heard, Shravana. Our reverse process has to be there. We have to first listen to it, then reflect on it, and then meditate on it. So I hope that we will do this significant and important chapter, which of course is called Purushottama Yoga, because it's to do with the very highest of these principles. So quite aptly, it's called Purushottama Yoga. So until next week, where we pick this subject up again, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, peace, peace, peace be unto all.